So that's great.
Excellent.
And we have some great ideas for you to get ready for spring. So as you can see, David and I are joined by a wonderful guest who you've seen before.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming out here in this chilly morning.
Hey, it's all right. At least we have spring on its way. So that groundhog had good news for us this morning.
Right.
And we have good news for you with our show about pruning today.
That's right.
Yeah, so what do you have in store for us?
So we're going to talk today about pruning, how to reinvigorate plants in your garden. Doing a little bit of late winter pruning can do a lot to add to your landscape.
Mm-hmm. Now, Amy, and we didn't mention that Amy Strunk is who is with us. Of course, you've seen her before. You see her at the garden center. You're usually at both Merrifield and Fair Oaks and Gainesville. You're everywhere, aren't you?
I really do all three stores. I try to keep it interesting and keep everybody on their toes, really.
I just assumed everybody knew you. That's what it was, right? Yeah.
Well, by now, let's hope that they do.
That's
so good morning.
right.
Thank you for having me.
One of our very talented landscape designers at Merrifield. Well, before we get started, have a couple of announcements at Merrifield Garden Center. Now, as we all know, even though it's wintertime, there's always something exciting happening at Merrifield Garden Center.
Yes.
So our seminars continue, and let's see what's happening today. At our Merrifield location, we've got dramatic garden makeovers at 10 a.m. Mary Kirk Menifee is going to be talking about that. She's going to show before and after photos of how to get your garden in wonderful, wonderful shape. So take advantage of that. At our Fair Oaks location, Robert Woodman is going to be talking about gardening trends in 2013. Now, last week we talked about some trends with Redetta, but we've got even more trends to talk about. So this will be great.
Yeah, they did touch base and I know consult with each other
That's
a little
right.
bit, but it will be a different presentation. We'll see what Robert has predicted for this year.
Absolutely. That's at our Fair Oaks location, again at 10 a.m. And at our Gainesville location, The Fascinating World of Orchids. Jonathan Cavalier is back. He was here a few weeks ago at our Merrifield location. This time he's at Gainesville. We like to split it up a little bit and give everybody a chance to get where they want to be. And he's going to be talking about orchids. So that is wonderful if you are into orchids at all, which they are really fun and really not difficult to grow.
They aren't difficult to grow, and actually Jonathan works with the Smithsonian now, and they've got a beautiful display coming up, and we have beautiful displays in our greenhouses too. So come see them, check them out, and see all the beautiful things we have to offer.
Great information, great information. And you know, the seminars continue all throughout the spring, and you can go to our website, merrifieldgardencenter.com, as you see on there, to get all of the seminar schedule, and including next week's, which delectable desserts and perennials with personalities. We are sorry to say that the Just for Kids seminar, which is offered that day, also is already filled up. So, but you've got these other two wonderful seminars to choose from, so that's great. So if you need any directions, any more information, just go to our website, merrifieldgardencenter.com. Now, Valentine's Day is just around the corner.
It is less than 2 weeks away, and we're ramped up and ready.
Gentlemen, we want to remind you that Valentine's Day is just around the corner.
And ladies too, gentlemen sometimes like a special something, so keep them in mind.
That's right. So just wanted to let you know, as always, we'll be having our beautiful long-stemmed roses, cut roses, available, boxed, or in a vase. And this, you can see, is something different. Also, we do arrangements. You can order fresh cut arrangements. This is something a little different that Tina put together, and she's excited about, calling it kind of a tropical Valentine arrangement. So as you can see, it's a little different. It's not your tradition.
It's not, but it's kind of nice. It's got a little bird of paradise, a little delphinium, some lilac. So if you have someone who likes a little fragrance in your life, we can always do favorite flowers if someone has a favorite flower. I know your mom likes the big, bright, and bold stuff, so Bob's sweet enough to get her some unusual things. So we can make anything to your custom specification. So
so if you want to order something specifically or order the roses, if you could get them ordered by February 11th, that helps us a lot, but doesn't have to be. So, but we'd appreciate that. So we try to give you lots of time to get this.
Lots of time together. And let us prepare well.
Right. And we've got something, I know you mentioned last week the Arlington Rose Foundation.
Right, and that kind of fits in a little bit, since we're talking about roses and Valentine's Day, of course that tradition is there. But they're going to have a really interesting seminar coming up. It's about using roses and making perfume.
Right.
I'm trying to find the exact dates on that.
She's an organic perfumer.
Right,
Wow.
so that's going to be on Sunday, February 10th from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon at our Fair Oaks location.
Okay.
That is open to the public. It's hosted and sponsored by the Arlington Rose Foundation, but they love roses, they're passionate about roses, want to share that passion, so they're inviting everybody, all the public, to come down and learn more about roses and specifically their tradition, history, and use in making perfume.
I'm noticing they've been trying to host a special speaker each winter, and last year was Stephen Scaliano, and that was great. Very interesting. So this should be just as wonderful. So take advantage of that. There's information at our stores if you have any questions. And quickly, we've got something going on that we're just starting. An e-blast went out last night. If you're on our emailing list, you got one of those. And if you're not, please call us or go online and join our emailing list. But we've got a special sale going on for the birds.
Exactly, and then what we're doing is we're offering suet cakes, but by the box. So you can buy a box of 10 suet cakes for $9.99. So that's a really good deal.
And it'll keep your little feathery friends nice and fed for the winter.
Yeah, or if you don't have a suet feeder, you can purchase a suet feeder and get a free suet cake to go along with it. So this is so important for the birds that need the energy, the fat, and the protein now when it's cold outside. So you don't want to miss that special offer because it's really just a terrific deal.
It's brand new, breaking news, so take advantage of it.
So you heard it here first.
That's right.
Come on in. We're well stocked. We've got some that have the hot pepper in it, which I know helps keep the squirrels away. I know people are often concerned about other critters eating what's for their birds. So that's a nice, thing to know that we have some specialties. And
it's fun. We've got lots of things for the birds. It's great. Okay, well, we've got a minute or so before we need to go to break. Can we get started with some pruning tips?
Well, good, because we've got about 20 minutes worth of material to present here.
Excellent. So stay tuned. We're going to go through these a little quick.
But we're going to start with that picture, just kind of illustrate. Our first point is that we really want to do our pruning now in the wintertime while the trees are bare. Gives you a chance to get in there and see the structure of the trees. You don't have to compete with the leaves, so it's just easier to get in there, do the work, less mess to clean up.
Less mess, and you can see, like David said, you can see the shape. This is a perfect example of that clear blue winter sky and seeing what you're able to prune.
Right, and there's no sap flowing in the tree, so you're not disturbing its growth. Now, a lot of times when we're pruning, a lot of what we're promoting is pruning to enhance and highlighting the natural form and structure of the tree. So we got a couple pictures how this can be applied in a landscape setting. Crepe myrtle, of course, which is a very popular plant in the landscape. And here's some way we've gone in the wintertime, sort of thinned out competing branches, opened up the canopy a little bit, and still get beautiful flowers. So a lot of times our objective is to really enhance the natural form and structure of the plant.
So you're still keeping this upright, vase-shaped habit so it looks just as dramatic in winter as it does when it's full of blooms. This next picture here is an example of a much more drastic form of pruning where they've cut them back to increase blooms, but they have altered, I will say, the structure of the plant. So if you notice about 3 feet right about where those shrubs hit, you sort of see those what you call knobby knees from where those pruning cuts have been made over time. So it just changes the shape and the structure of the plant. Not a bad thing, just a different way to prune.
Right, so there's different reasons that we do pruning, but the one rule that I'm going to put out there that kind of overrides everything is what I call my do no harm rule.
Yeah, the doctor's oath of planting and pruning.
Right, and so in our next image, what we're looking at really was some pruning was done at a shopping center pretty close to where I live, and in one image somebody went in and basically topped the trees, and on the other side of the road they did nothing, just left them alone.
So in this case, sometimes doing nothing isn't a bad thing.
Right, because I really wish they had left that alone, because when they go in, they top the tree, you're destroying the form of it. Each place where that wound has been created, it's allowing decay to enter into it, and then of course the tree starts sprouting back from there. And I've got a picture of what it's going to look like when it leaves out the next summer.
Right, so a little...
So is that better?
Well, that's a little lollipop right there.
Oh, weird.
It's a little dense, and we're going to leave you with that as we go to a break.
That's right.
And we're going to come back with some new inspiring tips on how to prune.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Merrifield's Gardening Advisor. We're talking about pruning today because right now the winter is a great time to do this because you can go out there on your deciduous trees and shrubs, and you can see the branching, you can see the structure in there. There's no growth taking place, so it's a great time to get out there and do the pruning. It's nice for us too, I mean, to get out of the house and have something to do.
It is. It's nice to get out in the garden, see what's going on, do a little bit of plotting and planning for the spring, and see what needs reinvigorated from what you didn't have time perhaps to do in the fall.
Right.
Especially since it was like 70 degrees the other day.
It was, actually. It was beautiful when we were doing these pruning shots.
Changed
that
yesterday,
changed quite a bit,
right?
yes.
Yeah, you'll see none of us had jackets on. It was great. And now today we're like in parkas and apparently getting a dusting of snow. So.
Right. Well, we were talking about there's a right and a wrong way to do everything. And so what you want to do is we're going to start out by showing you a Japanese maple as an example, sort of a before, during, and after of how the pruning was done. Now this is a beautiful specimen tree, a nice choice, but it has overgrown the size there. If you kind of look at this, it's there to enhance the entrance, but it's gotten big enough that it is now sort of blocking the entrance. So our goals here is we want to reduce the overall size of it. And that's one of the things I always emphasize is that you need to have a specific goal before you even undertake the pruning.
Right, so sort of have a plan in mind before you even pick up those pruning shears.
Right, so I'm going to try to take this down by about 25%. That's sort of a normal target.
So a reasonable amount for a established plan, I think, without doing any real drastic cuts.
Right, but here we're going to reduce the size but retain its natural form and structure. So that's the after. It just looks a little more open. If you looked at closely, it has reduced in size, but you've retained the natural structure, form, and shape of the plant.
Right, and allowing this to stay open is allowing for air circulation, which is healthier for the plant, less likelihood of getting pest and disease problems.
Yeah, we took out rubbing and crossing branches and deadwood and that kind of thing. And then here it is leafed out the next spring.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So that's the idea when we're working on some of these deciduous trees is we really want to maintain the beauty of it, especially on a specimen like this. But in this case, like I said, it's more structurally sound and the overall size has been reduced. Now another specimen plant that I was going to show that we worked on, this was because I want to talk a little bit about evergreens. This is a very unique situation. Planted right up there by the walk was a real special plant. This is a weeping Norway spruce grafted onto a blue spruce grafted onto a standard.
So it's an upright weeping form
of a green and blue spruce.
Right. Okay.
So it's pretty distinctive plant. Had a lot of history to it. But it's obviously way outgrown its spot there. It is, the Norway spruce side of it is really dominated, swallowed up most of the plant. It's blocking the windows, it's crowding out the other plants.
Can't really see the garage or the front windows.
Yeah, and I was telling the owner that really this is an example where it's just probably not the right plant for that location.
But customers love them and they love their specific plants, David, so we go in and we work with it and we prune it.
Right, so this is pretty drastic, but what I'm trying to show is a before and after, because here the thing is that you might say, okay, in the big scheme of things that's not the right plant, it should just be pulled out and removed, but at the same time it is such a special plant and it's doing the job for it. We went in there and cut it back pretty drastically to do that. So that's not standard kind of pruning, but it gives you an idea what you can do. And again, the thing I want to point out is that still we've enhanced the form. You can still see the weeping, drooping character of it, maintain it as a specimen. It wasn't just chopped up into a little ball.
Yeah.
Great. So that's, we're working with specimen plants. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about pruning some shrubs.
So this is a good example for doing something like a dogwood, perhaps, one of the deciduous red twig or yellow twig dogwoods that you would go in and do what we call selective thinning. So taking out crossing branches, any large branches. Typically the newer wood on things like the dogwoods have the most vibrant color. As they tend to get older and thicker, they tend to turn gray, which is not a bad thing, but not typically why people plant them. So taking out those older canes invigorates the plant and still keeps that beautiful vibrant color that people like to see in the winter landscape.
Right. I would also suggest you do this on some of your flowering deciduous shrubs, things like lilacs, because the idea is you're leaving enough growth behind that you still get a good floral display, but you're kind of rejuvenating and refreshing the plant.
Right.
So I've got a smoke tree here that we're going to use as an example. This is the before picture, very old plant that you can see. It's got a lot of the growth that's kind of growing up through the center of the plant, and it's rubbing against the branches, creating little wounds there. But what I'm trying to do here is I want to maintain the structure of those really heavy branches in there. Kind of almost has a little bit of a bonsai look to me.
It does. It's a little zen looking, and here's David working his zen with the plant. So getting out there with the pruning saw, doing a little rejuvenation, and then this next picture, after David's hard work, you can see that it still has that beautiful bonsai zen shape, but it is much more open and still a healthy plant. In this next picture, you can see how happy it was with the pruning. Still has the beautiful foliage, the beautiful plumes, that beautiful smoke that makes the smoke bush so distinctive. And I don't think looks any worse for the wear.
No, it's kind of rejuvenating the plant, but as I said, we left enough buds behind that still got some good flowering out of it.
Yeah, I think it still looks spectacular.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, David and Amy are going to go over to our virtual garden, like we like to call it, and work on something at Amy's house. She had a special pruning project she needed done. So we'll be right back.
Hi there, welcome back, and actually welcome to my garden. So today David and I and Debbie have been talking about pruning, and we're here actually in my garden, well, virtual garden, looking at a weeping redbud that I have planted in my front yard. So I wanted a small tree, something that was still ornamental, something that was flowering, but we live in a townhouse, so we were limited in options as far as what is small enough to be in a garden. And I love this. This is a beautiful choice. It's an early flowering, like the usual redbuds, flowers on the wood without the leaves yet. So it blooms and then it leaves out. And I think it's spectacular even in the winter. Although, as you can see here, it's not exactly as spectacular as it will be after David and I get done with it. So we came out, it was very jumbled. It had a lot of crossing branches, a lot of things going various ways. So David and I did a few minutes of consultation.
Right, and I want to mention, I think it's an excellent choice of plant, you know, nice specimen plant in here. It's not overgrown, so we're not trying to reduce its size or anything. We just want to kind of enhance the form on it. And you could use this also, I know, with Japanese maples. A lot of people use a specimen plant. So it's neat that we have this weeping tree to work on.
Right, or a weeping snowbell is another really beautiful choice for a small-ish landscape. But again, weeping trees, a lot of people, homeowners included, landscape designers included, don't always know where to start. You know, where do you start whenever you're doing something like this? And I probably should have started a little sooner than I did, but that doesn't mean we can't start today. So David and I are going to show you what we did here with this.
So we'll just go through. I'm going to step out so we get a good look at this.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to step back just a little bit so that you can see me with me. Little unusual. But here you can see we're talking about this before we're actually even getting started, and I'm actually going to step out too. So you can see David and I, no pruners in hand, explaining and sort of talking to one another about what we're going to cut and why. You want to cut any crossing branches, anything that is going sort of back in what we call towards the middle of the tree, anything that really would hinder its growth in the future.
Right, I always emphasize over and over and over, and I'll probably keep repeating, but you should have an objective before you start cutting. Don't feel like you just go out and prune. I mean, if the plant doesn't need pruning, it doesn't need pruning. But in this case, like Amy said, we're going to try to create more of a fountain-like appearance, as I keep describing. We want those branches sort of directed from the center out and eliminate those rubbing branches. So we've got an idea of what we're doing before we start cutting.
Right, so then this next image is cutting off any dead wood. So that's a good thing to talk about. You can cut off dead wood any time of the year at all. That's never going to actually hinder the plant.
Exactly. If there's a dead branch, remove it. Doesn't matter. You don't have to wait till winter.
Exactly. So right here along the trunk of the tree, you can see that I have my hand here with the pruners. I'm actually going to step out so you can see what we're doing. Is that we're cutting really close to that branch collar so that you're leaving a smaller diameter scar, basically, so that whenever the plant heals over, it heals over in the correct way, and that you have a nice clean cut, a nice neat cut, and you don't have any, what do you want to call them? Any waves or
stubs left behind.
Exactly, no stubs left behind. Thank you, David.
Right, exactly.
Little humor in there for your pruning today.
Yeah. So we did, like I said, we take the dead branches out, and then we start going in, taking some of the crisscross and rubbing branches, and we just go through these pictures here. This I think is a good illustration of why we want to eliminate some of the rubbing branches. You can sort of see this little spherical opening right in here. There had been a branch running right between there, and those branches are starting to get fused together.
Correct. So by taking that out, we're now opening that area that would have had right here, that branch crossing through it. So hopefully over time this branch will heal and continue to grow widthwise without that indentation.
Right, now I think we've got an even closer look at sort of the wound that was being created by that, and why, again, this is emphasizing why we really want to eliminate those crisscrossed and rubbing branches, because it causes this kind of injury and damage.
Right, and this is an area that it would stay damp. It's an area that pests could get into, or that disease and decay can go into. I mean, we could have eventually lost this branch. This wasn't a major structural branch, but it could be. So it's important to take those out when you have the opportunity so that you can alleviate long-term problems.
Right, so this is what I call pruning for structure. We're getting the dead branches out there, we're getting the crisscross rubbing branches out there. We just continue working through the tree.
Open it up. So this
and
next
you're right, it was a beautiful day. We did this just the other day when it was 70 degrees out. You know, again, it's winter time, you get a beautiful day, and this could happen to you. You know, we get one of these 50, 60 degree days. It's just, to me, the most rewarding part of gardening. You get immediate gratification. It's a great thing.
You do. This was probably maybe 45 minutes of our time, both of us. I mean, talking it through, pruning and doing the cleanup. I'm actually going to step out here so that you can see the happy pruner here with the pruning saw in hand. So this is David and I consulted, and I was taking out branches. So we used a combination of a pruning saw, a hand saw, and then 2 sets of pruners actually. So these are not major tools. These are something I would say most gardeners have in their arsenal of toolkits for gardening. Actually, I probably keep these even in my car. If you've heard me talk about that before, I always have pruners on hand. So anyhow, we'll move through this next picture. Again, you can start to see it opening up. You can start to see a few of those cuts that we've made. I know there's one right here and then one farther up right here that you can see those little scars, and eventually they will heal over. It does take a little bit of time, but the important thing is that this is long-term structure. And actually this branch right here above me that starts out looping here, goes here, comes back up and over, and then up towards David's head has something that we had talked about taking out, but both David and I thought it would change the structure of the tree too much, and it's something that probably should have been taken out in its youth. But again, this is a learning process, and I don't even get it right sometimes. Well, I mean, David gets it right, but
But that's why one of the reasons a lot of times I do like to buy my plants when they're young and sort of train them as they go. So we
right. And now that I know that, and now you will know that too, and that's what we're here is to help you.
But I like the word you had used earlier when you were saying all the congestion in there. I mean, that plant, if you could remember back to before pictures, it's just all those crossing branches, and you look at now how much more open it is. And so when this leaves out and when it flowers, you're going to really see that cascading structure of it that was just before would just look so dense.
Much more than a jumble
really
of
couldn't
leaves.
Even see the form of it.
Yeah, so here it is now, nicely pruned. Still has that beautiful weeping habit, but it's much more open. You can see we haven't really changed the width of it that much, but we definitely have, I think, enhanced its beauty and hopefully given it a few more beautiful years in my garden to come. So stay tuned. We will be back after this break and show you a little bit more pruning.
Well, Well, there we are, the happy pruners. Look at our finished job.
Yep, happy to be that finished product, and here we are, opposite sides. Okay, switch sides, there we go. There we are, happy pruners.
Mirror image, double. This is a little too weird. We have to move on.
All right, so getting on to this next picture here, this is a hydrangea that is in my backyard. This is the Limelight hydrangea, but it is on a standard. So it is a small tree, again, needed a small tree for the landscape, wanted something that enhanced the view of the golf course behind me. So I thought this was a great choice, only it is as big as my garden. So townhouse, small garden, this is sort of eating that corner.
And I feel like we should mention, because I've used that term standard a couple times today, for people who don't know, things like this is a multi-stem shrub naturally, but can be trained or grafted onto one stem.
Right.
So we've talked about that with the blue spruce was trained up on standard form. So that's all we're referring to.
So it's an upright form, basically.
Yes, we
so
took a shrub and made it a little tree.
Yes, which I like because you can control it a little bit better in the landscape. And we'll see how we can control it here in a moment. But as you can see, David and I standing here with the hydrangea, it is a big tree. It's probably, what was it, 8 feet, 9 feet to start?
At least. And the thing is, with this plant, with this hydrangea, you can get aggressive with the pruning because it's what we call it flowers off of new wood. Right. So we're going to go in there and pretty drastically reduce the size of it, but that's going to allow it still. This plant can regrow, rebloom, and so you need to know your plants, I guess is my point. Right.
So pay attention to when things flower so you're not cutting off the buds. So we're going to talk about right here, I've got the pruning saw out, and we've got a branch that is actually coming towards the front of the plant. So you can see from, actually I'm going to step back just a little bit so you can see where we made these cuts, that there was a branch that's heading towards me and towards where David and I were standing, that we're cutting out, removing it, and continuing to keep that open feeling.
Right, so this plant had good structure to it, unlike the red bud that had all those crossing branches and you're trying to get the structure better. This one really needed just minor structural work, but our big goal was reducing the size of it overall.
Containing the height.
And this is also gives you an idea of the proper way to make that pruning cut we're talking about, where you don't want to leave a stub behind, but at the same time you don't want to cut into the main branch.
So I'm going to move my shoulder just a little bit so you can see that there's still that little bit of a collar right there so that can heal off nice and clean.
Right. So we went in, did our little bit of structural correction, which was minor.
And this is a close-up of me here showing you where exactly to cut. So we want to be able to cut right by those bud scars. Those buds are going to be the new leaves coming out, and that's what is going to increase that flowering. So cutting right in front of that, and I'm actually holding the branch a little bit upside down so that you can see, is going to allow those buds to still come out in the correct formation, and we're controlling back to that for height.
Yeah, exactly. Again, if you leave a stub behind, that's just going to rot and decay and leave dead wood. So we want to get close, but not actually cutting into the bud. So when we go up to start reducing the size of it, that's where all of our cuts are being made.
Correct. It's just tough to see in the big picture, which we'll look at next. So here you can see we've definitely taken it down. You wouldn't have even known that there was a golf course there when David and I started. But this still has a beautiful shape, still has a beautiful structure, and is significantly smaller, and we will show you pictures of it throughout the seasons. I'm sure I will be on again if all goes smoothly, and we can show it to you in the spring, summer, and maybe fall.
And if this doesn't work, we'll just never bring it up again. No,
if it doesn't work, well, this is just your first and last time of seeing a hydrangea.
No, this plant, it's really what we've done is it's going to bring it back into scale, into proper size. Like I said, just like you can do this with crepe myrtles also, or your summer flowering shrubs. It's going to regrow, resprout, rebloom. Also, we talked a little bit about the standard form. I think you can really start to see it now. It has a little bit of that tree type of look to it.
Exactly, and this still casts a little bit of shade. I mean, I've got a tree peony in there, I've got columbine below this that I hope comes up despite us standing on it. It'll be fine. So that's one of those things that still can create a little bit of privacy and shade in your garden.
Right. Now this was gives you an idea. Yeah, the debris
pile. This is the pile. Here we've got, let's step out. We can see how much we took out. That was a lot, but I think it's a healthier plant because of it. So I think that's important. And then this next picture here
Oh.
The happy pruners again. So pruning shears in hand are always a good way to end the day, and gosh, what a beautiful day that was.
I stay still, friends. I tell you, it wasn't as easy as it looks. You know, Amy was getting poked in the eye and jabbed in the side and kind of hollering at me here and there for pruning, but we made it.
We made it. We're stuck together through the thick and thin. No, I think it's important to keep a sense of humor about it, and like David and I did, you step back. You look at your cuts, you step back, and you make a few more. It's not something that you can just, you know, glue back on whenever you decide to make the wrong cut.
Now, super quick, I want to show a couple pictures of a viburnum, because this viburnum is a spring flowering shrub. Now, because a lot we've talked a little bit about crepe myrtles and the hydrangea.
Right.
Those you can cut back aggressively, and they resprout and they rebloom, no problem.
Right.
A lot of your spring flowering shrubs like viburnum, they already have their flower buds on there.
Azaleas, rhododendrons are other good examples.
Right, so you would want to avoid going and getting too aggressive with the pruning on these, or it removes all the flower buds. So this is a classic example on a plant like this where we go back to our selective thinning, more like we do the smoke bush, reducing it maybe like 25% at a time, so you still have plenty of material left behind to bloom.
Right.
This is what I think goes wrong when you just go in and take the shears to it.
Right, whenever you just, well, shears or hedge clippers.
Yeah.
So you can see here it's a little, a little
so you'll
bit
see
of a ball.
Our pruning, basically we use the hand pruners and the pruning saw is what I'm getting at. I think those are the two tools that you need. And this one, you go in with the hedge clippers, you know, and cut it into this nice round spherical shape.
A boxwood shape.
Right. You have taken the flowers off, you've taken the form away from it. So particularly with our deciduous shrubs, you know, unless you're creating a hedge type of effect, hand pruners and pruning saw I think is really all you need.
Right.
Good. All right, this part where we start to take your phone calls. So we're going to take a little commercial break, but when we come back, we'd love to hear from you, whether it's questions on pruning, Valentine's gifts, ideas, roses, anything, just give us a call, 703-387-1046.
Welcome back. David and Amy have come back out of the virtual garden and we're ready to take your phone calls. So if you have any gardening questions, please give us a call, 703-387-1046. And our first caller is Marcia, who's calling from Silver Spring. Hi, Marcia.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Good.
My question this morning, I just saw you trimming this hydrangea tree. I'm wondering about his hydrangea bushes. So should we be cutting those back at this time?
No. I'm going to say, I mean, hydrangeas, it depends a lot on exactly which one it is.
Right.
Yeah, if you're talking about a lot of times the one that has the pink or the blue flowers on it.
Yeah.
Those, they flower off of old wood.
Right.
So those have to be handled a little bit differently.
Right, so there are two different types of hydrangeas. There are ones that bloom on new wood and there are ones that bloom on old wood. So the ones that bloom on the new wood, like what I had, the limelight hydrangea, you can prune back now because they're going to be setting their buds and they're going to be flowering later in the season. The ones that bloom on the old wood, if you were to cut back those branches, you would lose the flowering. So if it's blocking, let's say, a walkway or a gate that you need to get into, you could prune it, but you would sacrifice the blooms. So that's really up to you whether or not you want to prune it, but if you're trying to encourage or increase the flowers, cutting it back now would not do that.
Okay, great. Now, would you cut? Is that something you would cut back maybe in the fall, or do you just leave the bush alone?
Well,
I usually cut them back.
Time to do that sort of selective thinning would be the other, where you can thin some of the branches, but still leave enough behind that you get good flowering.
Right. I usually use 4th of July as my cutoff to do my pruning. I have other hydrangeas at my mom's house, and I use them for our 4th of July picnics. I behead them all, cut them, dry them, and then to me that's sort of my drop dead end date. I know that if I prune them after that, I would probably be cutting off next year's buds. So, I mean, you could probably wait later than that, but 4th of July just sticks in my head as a good date to remember. You know, if it were supposed to be August 1st, there's no way I'd remember that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure, thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Okay, our next caller is Mike, who's calling from Fairfax. Hi, Mike.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm trying to create a living hedge. I've got a row of Nellie Stephen hollies, about 5 feet tall, and every one of these plants, the leaves stem. The primary stem's been cut off, so there's no lead stem on any of these plants. Would it help if I train or try to promote a lead stem to grow straight up? And my second question is, if these are 5 feet tall without a primary stem, how tall will these Nellie Stevens get without that lead stem?
Pretty huge.
Yeah, I mean, most Nellies are in the 30-ish foot range or more. 25 to 30 high and 12 to 20 feet wide is what I've seen fairly consistently.
Yeah. So to me, it depends a little bit on what you're trying to do. You're mentioning having a hedge. That central leader is not as important, and you can shear these plants and just create that living hedge or screen look to it. Maintaining that central leader, I think, pertains more to if it was a specimen plant that's standing alone. So my question to you is, how big do you want this hedge to become at maturity?
As tall as possible. 30 feet would be excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Then I don't think you necessarily need to train it to a central leader, because it is just going to be forming a dense evergreen screen. And Nellie Stevens responds really well to pruning.
Yes.
So you can basically shape it to whatever size and shape you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't do it this year and wait a year or 2 or 3 years, you can always come in and thin them and fatten them up and thicken them up, especially if they're in a shady spot. They, may need that from time to time.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Right,
good luck. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay, let's go to our next caller, who is Erica from Temple Hills. Hi, Erica.
Hi, how are you?
Great, and
Doing
you?
just great.
Doing great. I was calling because I have a plum tree that has not bared any fruit for at least 5 years. Wondering, are we going to ever see the fruit again? Or it has beautiful blooms, but we want some fruit.
Well, I'm wondering if you do have a flowering plum. I mean, there's some species that are grown just strictly as ornamentals, and then there are others that are for fruit production. Now, are you saying that this at one time was producing fruit?
Yes, sir. It was producing fruit for probably like 3 years straight, and then all of a sudden it just started with the flowering.
Okay, but does it set fruit and that fruit drops off, or it just never produces?
No, it produced fruit. I mean, and we were able to pick it, and it bared a lot of fruit, as a matter of fact.
All right. I mean, I would suggest, plums are one of the easiest, most productive fruit trees that you can grow out there. Pruning might be a really sensible thing to do, to go in there and just kind of do a little rejuvenation pruning.
Yeah, take out any of the, dead wood, any of the crossing branches, even taking it back to that next set of buds can increase the amount of new growth on it. How old is the tree?
It's probably about 8 years old.
Yeah, if it produced in the beginning and hasn't, I don't think pruning and even a little bit of light compost around the base of it as a nice, good, rich fertilizer could do it a little bit of good.
Okay. I'll give it a try.
Okay. Thanks for your call.
And thank you.
All right, good luck with that.
Okay, let's see if we can sneak one more in. Ed is calling from Fairfax. You there, Ed?
Yes, I am.
How are you?
Pretty good, thank you. And as always, I enjoy your show.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, along with your comment of trying to